Hi, I'm Julian Ackley. It's really late at night and I'm really dirty, but I just felt like I needed to quickly answer one question that I get asked all the time, which is, Julian, why do we have 5 fingers? Well, I'm glad you asked. The reason we have 5 fingers is because it represents our ability to go in all directions. And how do we go in new directions in our life? Well, the way we go in new directions, this is my theory, is that virtues, you know how every virtue has an opposing virtue, like toughness or tenderness or whatever, like opposites, but they both can be virtues, and every virtue is kind of like that. That's because my opinion is that the virtues are literal things that have energy in our lives. Like when we tap into a virtue, it goes beyond our own actions and the virtue starts to take on a life of its own. This is why, like, for example, lots of people get hung up on, like, oh, if you're doing a generous act, are you doing it for the right reasons? And I think that's really retarded, really dumb, because the thing about it is acts have a life of their own, you know? Acts align us with spirits that take on a life of its own. Like if you're chopping up kids while they're screaming and you're doing it for a good reason, it's still gonna have a bad impact on you because it's just the nature of it, you know what I mean? And if you're like dressing up like a clown and entertaining orphans, and it doesn't really matter if you think you're doing it for selfish reasons, for unselfish reasons, whatever, it still has its own spirit that will overtake you. I forget why I went off on that tangent, but anyway, what I was trying to say really is that virtues are living things. They're living forces, and I think that the virtues are literally the stars in the sky. Like each star represents a virtue, and we can tap into that virtue, and by tapping into that virtue, that is how we can, just like sailors follow a star to move in a new direction, we can follow a new virtue, and then that starts to move our life into a new direction. Not just because it changes our actions, but it actually draws in new supernatural powers into our lives. So it's like, if you don't like the direction that your life is going, you could change the virtues that you're aligning with, you know? Because I think what happens frequently is that whatever virtues we're used to aligning with, we kind of take it on as our identity, you know? Like, oh, I'm this type of person, or I'm that type of person. But the meaning of having 5 fingers on each hand is 5. The number 5 represents the ability to go in any direction at will. You know, that the number 5 represents the ability, like I said, to move in any direction. Hey girl, come here. Come here, slippers. It represents the ability to, well, I'll say it a third time, to go in any direction. So you can start at any point on the globe, you can go to any other point on the globe, then you can go backwards, you can go sideways, you can go wherever you want, while still remaining the same person. So it's like, what virtues you've traditionally aligned with, that's the direction that you're used to walking in. It doesn't mean you have to continue walking that direction. You could try being a totally different type of person for the summer, and then you could go back and be the same type of person you were before, and then you could be, you know, like you can change at any time. And one example of a polarity in which a person could change would be how generous they are versus how, what would the opposite virtue to generosity be? Like conservative or frugal or stingy. I don't know if stingy is a virtue, but you know, that would be like Saturn and Jupiter represent these 2 polarities. And so if you're used to being more like Scrooge or whatever, you could try being the reverse, you know? Or you could try, if you're used to being really generous, you could try being the reverse of that. But that's one example that I need to talk more about tomorrow. But I'll just leave this video at this simple point, that the reason we have 5 fingers is because it represents the ability that humans were given to move in any direction at will. The stars are virtues, which represent all these different directions that we can go in at any point in order to unleash new supernatural winds that will then change the course of our life. We can try moving in that direction, then move back, zigzag, whatever. And that's like how we have the ability to navigate to different types of realities in the same way that sailors use the stars to navigate to different points on the globe. That's all for now. I'm Julian Ackley. I thank you. Bye.